morning.
Can you state your name for the record and spell your last name, please?
Linda Rush O'Neill, O''Neil.
Okay. And Miss O'Neill, what did you do for a living back on August 23rd of 2018, 25th of 2018?
I was an associate medical examiner for District 19 Medical Examiner's Office in the state of Florida.
Okay. Can you give the jury a thumbnail sketch of your education, your training, and your experience, please?
I graduated from the University of Memphis in 1987 with a Bachelor's of Science degree. Following that, I attended East Tennessee State University Quillen College of Medicine, where I graduated with a medical degree in 1992. After that, I did a 5-year residency program, which I completed in St. Louis at St. Louis University Hospital in St. Louis. After that, I did a 1-year fellowship training in forensic pathology at the Broward County Medical Examiner's Office in Broward County, Florida.
Okay. And are you licensed to practice medicine in the state of Florida?
I am.
Okay. And I want to talk specifically about your career track. And you just mentioned Broward County. So can you go ahead and elaborate on that for the jury? What did you do in Broward County?
I joined there. I did my fellowship training there. And then I joined as an associate medical examiner there in January of 1999. I continued to work for the Broward County Medical Examiner's Office until 2004. And then I became an associate medical examiner for the West Palm Beach County Medical Examiner's Office. And I was there until May of 2009, which at that time I joined the District 19 Medical Examiner's Office. And I was there until I retired in 2020.
Okay. And go ahead and just give the jury a general description of what a medical examiner does on a day-to-day basis.
Basically, in the state of Florida, the medical examiner is investigating certain deaths that fall under their jurisdiction. Most of them, of which we do autopsy examinations on, and the autopsy examinations are done to determine cause and manner of death.
Okay. And go ahead and describe what an autopsy is. Give the jury an overview about what an autopsy is. What an autopsy is. I'm sorry.
Basically, an autopsy is an examination of a deceased person. It's an external examination of the body and an internal examination of the body. The external examination of the body is not only just the characteristics of the body, female, male, height, weight, also whatever's on the body, be clothing or anything else that you would find on the body. Evidence would be collected from the body. Then there would be documentation of injuries or any other kind of abnormalities on the external part of the body. Photographs would be taken during all these parts of the autopsy examination. Sometimes x-rays are taken prior to the internal examination. And then an internal examination is done, in which the chest cavity is open, the abdominal cavity is open, the cranial cavity is open, and all the organs inside those cavities are taken out and examined.
Okay. And approximately how many autopsies have you performed in your entire career?
I don't remember the exact count, but when I retired, it was over 5,000.
Okay. And have you ever testified in circuit court regarding your findings from an autopsy?
I have.
Approximately how many times?
Over 100 times.
Okay.
I don't have an exact number.
Sure. And were you working on August 25th of 2018?
I was.
Okay. And what were you doing that day?
That day on August 25th of 2018, I became involved with the case of Tonia Wise and did an autopsy examination on her that morning.
Okay. And what materials did you review in order to form your opinions in this case?
You mean just recently or
Ever.
at the time?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, obviously all the findings of the medical examiner's office, any information that would be given to me by law enforcement or their personnel, laboratory findings, because we do other things like toxicology analysis and microscopic examinations. We did an x-ray examinations on her body. So all of those would have been involved in determining the cause and manner of death.
Okay, thank you. And You mentioned a toxicology test.
Yes,
We'll start there. Was a toxicology test performed on Tonia Wise?
yes.
Okay, go ahead and first explain what the toxicology test is and what it's testing for.
During the autopsy examination, we take blood and other body fluids. Those are sent to a laboratory that does the toxicology testing. They test for, they do drug screen and alcohol screen, testing for the presence of those in the body. And that was done in this case.
Okay, and what were the results?
The results in this case, I took heart blood from her body, and the heart blood showed a level of 0.017 grams per deciliter of ethanol. Also, at the time of the autopsy, I took vitreous fluid, which is fluid from the eye, and that was tested and showed no ethanol present in that specimen.
Okay, and ethanol is alcohol.
Correct.
Okay, so can you go ahead and explain to the jury why that number for ethanol is important to them?
Yes, in this case, there was some decomposition occurring, and ethanol can be created by bacteria that is in the body and is affecting the body after when decomposition starts. It can create ethanol in the body. So her level was so small that in all likelihood, in my opinion, it's from the decomposition, because the vitreous fluid in the eye, there's none present. And also on this particular autopsy, there was a collection of blood in the cranial cavity called subdural hemorrhage, which would be unlikely as affected by bacterial decomposition than the heart blood would be. And it showed no evidence of ethanol either. So none in the vitreous fluid, none in the ocular fluid, and just a small amount in the heart blood fluid.
Okay, is that more consistent with decomposition and inconsistent with ingesting alcohol, like beer, wine, etc.?
Yes.
And did you, I think you mentioned it earlier, but as part of your autopsy, do you take photos to document the injuries and the other important aspects of the autopsy?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what has been marked as States Exhibits number 118 through 143. If you could take a look at those for me for a second. What were those numbers, Mr. Ricky? 118 to 143.
These are all photographs from the autopsy examination.
Okay. And those exhibits right there, 118 through 143, are those fair and accurate depictions of the autopsy that you performed on Tonia Wise and her baby Josiah?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, the state moves into evidence 118 to 143.
Any objection?
No objection.
Those items will come into evidence without objection.
And permission to publish.
You may.
Okay. So here we're looking at exhibit number 118. Go ahead and just briefly describe what we're looking at here, Dr.
This is an initial photograph. This is how she was at the medical examiner's office before we started any of the examination. So it's an initial photograph showing her at the medical examiner's office.
Okay. And is it part of your process for every autopsy to take photographs like this where the victim comes in or the body comes in and you take initial photographs without unclothing them first?
Yes.
Okay. And let's advance to exhibit number 119. And same question, what are we looking at here?
This is an identification photograph. This is taken after the body is clean so we can get a good picture of the face for identification.
Okay. And I first noticed there's some red marks on her face and shoulders and chest and arms. Can you explain to the jury what that is?
One of the things that happens after we die is the postmortem settling of the blood, which is called livor mortis or lividity. When we die, our blood stops moving in our body and it will settle to the dependent area by gravity. So if you're on your back, it can settle on the back. If you're lying face down, it could settle on the front of the body. And for a period of time, that can move. Like for a period of time, if someone was on their face and moved over to their back, the lividity can move to the back and vice versa, or in any other way that gravity is affecting the body. But after a certain amount of time, that lividity becomes fixed, which means that it's not going to move when the body moves. So it's fixed in the position of the dependent gravity in a body position.
Okay. And if we could advance to exhibit number 120, please. Okay. So here we are looking at exhibit number 120. What exactly do you see here, doctor, that's important to you?
This is a photograph of a wound on the top of the head. It's on the top of the head, but the posterior aspect, so the top back of the head. You can see there through the head hair, you can see that there's a large wound that's visible.
Okay. And exhibit number 121, please.
Again, that's a close-up showing that this is a gaping wound, and it's a full thickness gaping wound because even now, even with head hair there, you can see at the bottom of that photograph skull, you can see visible skull through the margins of the wound.
Okay. And exhibit number 122, please.
This is that same wound.
123.
This is after the head hair around it has been shaved, so you can get a better look at the margins of the wound and the tissue involving the wound. And then again, you can see the skull through the base of that laceration.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, we're looking at exhibit 122 here. Okay, so tell us about this wound, doctor. Can you go into more detail about that wound? First of all, what you believe caused it, and what were the consequences from it?
Well, this type of wound is a blunt trauma injury, meaning that it's a forceful blow to the body. Blunt trauma injuries include bruises or contusions. It includes abrasions, scraping of skin. It includes lacerations, which is kind of a crush and tear injury of the skin. And fractures are also common blunt trauma injuries. In this case, this wound is a full thickness laceration or blunt force trauma. And there is fracture of the skull too underlying this. So this is a full thickness laceration, full thickness blunt force injury, which would have been a very forceful blow with some type of heavy object. I can't say specifically what that object was.
Is this something that could have been caused by human hands, or does it require something heavier and more substantial?
I cannot think of a way that this could have been caused by a human hand.
Okay. So when you say a heavy object, can you elaborate on that?
Objection, Judge Costa.
I'll rule the speculation objection so long as it's within your ability as a doctor to describe it with some specificity.
Heavy object being something not lightweight, something with some weight to it, and it would be used forcefully to cause this injury.
Would it have had to have had a sharp edge to it at some point?
This is a blunt force injury, so blunt force injuries wouldn't necessarily be caused by anything sharp. There's no sharp margin of the wound. When you think of a laceration is kind of a tearing, a crushing, tearing injury. Like if you had a piece of material and you tore it and you have those little bridging fibers between it, that's kind of what happens with a laceration that you can see in that photograph. A sharp force injury is going to have smoother margins, like if you had that same material and you cut it with scissors, and it would be nice and smooth on each side. So this is a blunt force injury.
If we could advance to the next slide, which is exhibit 123.
123, what are we looking at here?
This is the same wound. In the previous photographs, it's gaping open. So we try to reapproximate the margins to see if we can get any other identifying features, not necessarily to determine right from the picture what it was, but if we have something that we could compare it to later, it might help, in that comparison.
In exhibit 124.
That is the same wound, reapproximated with the margins pushed together. You can see there's some perpendicular lacerations extending from the margins of the wound.
Okay, and how long was this wound?
The wound was 9 centimeters in length, which is approximately 3.5 inches.
And go ahead and describe the consequences of this wound. What conditions did you see? What flowed from that?
Well, on the internal examination, when the skin is removed from the scalp, there's a skull fracture that's visible. And then when the top of the cranium is taken off and we look at the brain inside, there's actual bruising of the brain. There's subarachnoid hemorrhage of the brain, which is the thin layer that covers the brain itself. And then the dura, which is a thicker membrane around the brain, there was subdural hemorrhage or hemorrhage underneath that dura. So it not only affected the skin and the skull, it also affected the brain.
Okay. And when you say subdural hemorrhage, what exactly does that mean?
That means that there's collection of blood, that there was bleeding inside the cranial cavity that collected in the subdural space.
Okay. And you also used the word that I have the same question for, subarachnoid hemorrhage. What is that?
The arachnoid layer is a very thin, translucent tissue that covers the external part of the brain. And so it would be hemorrhage underneath that layer.
And you indicated that there was a skull fracture present as well?
Correct.
Okay, can you describe that for the jury?
The skull fracture starts at the point where you see this laceration, and it curves around to the left side of the skull, the left parietal and frontal region of the skull. So it's a linear fracture extending from the point of the blow.
And is there also cerebral edema
Yes.
present? Can you explain to the jury what that is?
When the brain undergoes trauma like this, one of the things that quickly happens is the brain swells because of the injury. So cerebral edema is swelling of the brain.
Dr. O'Neill, can you, based on your training and experience, can you describe for the jury, as best you can, how much force was used to cause the injuries to Miss Wise's head that we've seen thus far?
What I could say is it's extreme force. It's one forceful blow with an instrument that would be heavy enough to create that wound.
Okay. Is the wound that you've just described and the pictures that correspond to it Would that have automatically rendered Miss Wise unconscious, or could she have maintained at least some measure of consciousness after receiving that blow?
It may or may not have rendered her immediately unconscious.
And I want you to set aside the other injuries and just focus on this injury, okay? If we set aside those injuries, is this head wound, is this head injury sufficient by itself to cause death, assuming that there's no immediate medical attention that Miss Wise could have received?
Yes, this one could have caused death.
Okay. Now, as we're sitting here, you've just described the injury. We've seen the photos. Let me ask you this. Did Miss Wise feel a high degree of pain as a result of this injury?
Objection, cause for speculation.
And what would be a good approach?
And then let's proceed to the next exhibit. What number is it? Okay. We're looking at 125, I'm sorry. Go ahead and describe this for you.
This is a photograph of the same injury. The skull is present at the base.
Okay. And 126? What are we looking at here?
This is a photograph of the skull after the scalp has been removed. During the autopsy examination, we make an incision across the top of the scalp and reflect it forward and reflect it backward. So this injury, that you can see the skull is visible, the entire skull is visible. And you can see that linear, there's a line that's going in the picture. It's horizontal just above where the ruler is, and that's the fracture. The point of impact being on the right side of that, and then that linear fracture extending across that photograph.
Okay. And the next exhibit? Which is what? We're looking at 127 here. Go ahead and explain what we're looking at here.
Again, that is the fracture, linear fracture. The top of the head is actually just above the ruler there. The top of the head is towards the right. So that would have been underlying that point of impact. And then you see the linear fracture. It gives you a little bit better location of how that fracture starts at the top posterior part of the head and then goes around the left side of the skull.
Okay. And 128, please. Okay. Again, what are we looking at?
This is a photograph of the brain after the skull cap has been removed. You can see there's darker red regions of the brain, and then there's more pink or lighter regions of the brain. The darker red regions are where there is hemorrhage and contusion of the brain. And that would be, there's a little thin translucent membrane. That's the subarachnoid membrane that we were talking about. And you can see that there's hemorrhage underneath that.
And the next exhibit, which is 129. Okay, so let's transition from the head injury to other injuries of the body. What were the locations on the body that you observed additional injuries?
There was a large incised wound that extends from the front of the neck to the back of the neck. And then in this photograph, you see a smaller incised wound, which is on the left clavicular region of the body. So just near the left clavicle. That's an incised wound. That's a sharp wound. If you look at the margins of that wound, you see they're nice and smooth. So it's caused by something that's sharp.
I believe we're looking at 129 here. And go ahead and, I believe you said this was on the clavicle?
In the clavicular region of, yes.
Okay. And how deep and long was this wound?
This one was 2 centimeters in length and 0.5 centimeters in depth. To give you a comparison, 2.54 inches is related to a centimeter. So, I mean, 2.54 inches. I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And we'll move on to Exhibit 130. What are we looking at here?
This is the incised wound of the neck. This wound starts in the front of the neck and goes around to the right side of the neck and to the right back of the neck. This is the incised wound at the anterior margin, and it's really bifurcated. Right here, you're seeing one margin of that wound. If we go to another photograph, I think you'll see that there's more than.
Yes, ma'am.
Just-
Go to 131.
Right. So this is the wound margin when the head is tilted back, and you can see that there are 2 distinct lines, a V-shaped bifurcation of the anterior part of the neck where this incised wound starts at the front of the neck. You can see it goes full thickness through the skin, and then it goes around the side of the neck to the back of the neck. In this case, there are 2 wound tracts that merge. So there's 2 incised wounds that merge into one wound tract.
Meaning that there were 2 wounds, not one. This is not one continuous wound. This is 2.
2, yes.
And can you explain and describe for the jury how long each wound was, as well as the depth?
Yes. I believe I said it backwards before. So an inch is 2.54 centimeters. To give you, I think I said it backwards last time. But this wound in centimeters was 19 centimeters in length. And in inches, that would be 7.5 inches in length.
And the depth?
The depth of the wound ranged from in the deepest part of that wound, it went to 1 1/2 inches. And in other areas, is 1 1/4 inches in depth.
Okay. At any point along that wound, did it approach or even touch the neck bone or any bone in the neck?
At its deepest margin on the lateral neck, you could see the cervical vertebrae at the base of the wound, yes.
And describe the amount of force that had to have been used to create those wounds that we're seeing here in Exhibit 131.
This would have been caused with a sharp force instrument. So it's a cutting, incised, sharp force injury. So depending on the wound and how sharp it was, it would depend on the force.
Do you mean the instrument? You said the wound and how sharp it was. You mean the instrument?
The instrument would have a sharp edge, yes.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so depending on the instrument and the sharpness of the instrument, that would depend on how much force it would take to create these injuries.
Okay. And what is the directionality of these incised wounds?
These wounds start on the front of the neck and end on the posterior part of the neck,
Okay. So front to back.
front to back.
And if we could advance to the next slide. Okay, now we're looking at Exhibit 132. Go ahead and describe this for the jury.
So this is on the right side of the neck. This is where those 2 incised wounds have merged together and have created one larger incised wound. And you're looking at that wound gaping open on the right side of the neck.
Okay. And the next exhibit, 133.
Again, that's the incised wound. You can see the bifurcation on the anterior neck. And then on the right side of the neck, you can see that there is depth to this wound. You can see where it's gaping open. Those are the regions where it went the deepest on the right side of the neck.
And Exhibit 134.
This is showing the wound approaching towards the back of the neck. So this is the right side of the neck, and the wound continues to the posterior right neck.
And Exhibit 135. What are we looking at?
Because there's an inside wound of the neck, we want to see what things were damaged by that. There's obviously skin, soft tissue, and some muscular damage because of the sharp force trauma. But also we're looking at the vessels, what vessels would have been affected in the neck. In this photograph, you can see the forceps is holding up. This is the external right jugular vein that's completely transected. You can see the hole underneath the forceps, where the forceps holding it open. That's the jugular vein incised open.
Okay, and just a little bit more detail. What is the purpose, or what does the jugular vein do?
The external jugular vein, it drains blood from our scalp and face. It's draining it from our head in those regions and taking it back to the heart.
Okay, and and we're seeing here that the external jugular vein has been cut or severed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury the amount of loss of blood that would have resulted from this wound?
Well, this wound, there would be quite a bit of blood loss from this wound, and this blood loss from this wound could cause death in and of itself if it's not medically treated.
Okay. And the next slide. 136 we're looking at here.
That's a close-up of that external jugular vein. You can see it better in this photograph. The opening there is the external jugular vein incised open.
Okay. Exhibit 137.
And this is the posterior neck. So you can see that this incised wound goes all the way around from the front of the neck, the right side of the neck, to the back of the neck.
And I want to return to the head injury for a second. Okay. As you know from the materials, the victim was found in near some vomit. Can you describe to the jury what would have caused the vomit?
Well, nausea and vomiting is not uncommon with head wounds and head trauma. So in this instance, that type of head injury could induce vomiting.
Is there a relationship between the victim vomiting and the loss of consciousness or the ability to stay conscious?
No.
And did you observe?
Could you re-ask and clarify that question and answer? I'm not sure I understood.
Okay. With respect to the vomit, okay, when somebody vomits, does that mean that can someone vomit in a state of unconsciousness?
Yes.
Okay. And did you observe any defensive wounds on Miss Wise's body?
I did not.
Okay. And based on the materials that you've read and your overall understanding of the case, based on your examination and your photographs and everything that you've described, can you tell the jury what can you tell the jury about the time of death in this case?
Time of death is it's a very difficult thing to determine. There are very factors that we look at to see if we can narrow down a time frame. Basically, when we're looking at time of death, in a case like this where a body is found outside, we start with the window that's the easiest, which is when do we know they were last alive? When can we verify they were alive? And then when were they found? So that's the time frame we start with. As far as I recall, I believe she was last known to be alive around 8 o'clock the night prior. And then she's seen by a passerby close to 11 o'clock in the morning the next day. So that's our time frame window. And then we look at other factors of the body to see if we can make any determination of anything that we can narrow that down. One of the things that we look at is the stiffening of the body. Stiffening or rigidity or rigor mortis is when the body, after someone dies, because of reactions that are happening in the muscle fibers of the body is first flaccid, then it becomes stiff, fully stiff for a certain period of time, and then that stiffness goes away. Typically, and under normal circumstances, that rigidity, it would take approximately 12 hours for it to become really full. So a person is really fully stiff. Then it would stay about 12 hours. And then after that, it would go away in 12 hours. So in about 36 hours, they've gone through the whole range. She was seen there at 10:53. Investigator from our office was at the scene around 1 o'clock and noted that there was full rigidity. So at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, on August the 24th, she was in full rigidity. Another thing that we look at when we're looking at the body is the lividity that we just discussed. The lividity is the pooling of the blood. The blood goes to where the lowest point that gravity is taking it, and it will stay there. And if it stays there and the body's not moved, it becomes fixed. In other words, even if we move the body after that, that lividity is not going to move. That usually takes somewhere between 8 and 12 hours. So in her case, at 1 o'clock, the investigator's there, she's moved, and her lividity is on the interior part of the body. So the next day, when I do the examination of the body, it's still on the anterior part of the body, which means it was fixed there. So at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that was fixed. So if we look at those time frames, assuming that the rigidity is there at 1 o'clock and the lividity is fixed at 1 o'clock, it could be at least 12 hours from the time of her death, and it can be longer, up to 24, which we know it wasn't that long because we know that she was alive. So.
Before you continue on with your examination, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take our mid-morning bathroom break for 10 minutes. Please remember, leave your notes on your chairs. Do not discuss the case with each other. Please proceed to the jury room. Feel free to use the restrooms, and we'll be with you in about 10 minutes. All right, jury has exited the courtroom. We'll take a 10-minute bathroom break, recess. We'll come back in 10 minutes. Go off the record.
So I guess we get to see how this judge is going to be far as bathroom breaks, his first breaks and things. So I'm just reading the chat. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. See, like it's like twofold, right? I think it depends on how their attorneys prep them. I think some of them they can't show any. Like they don't want them to show like they have a sense of guilt, I guess. Yeah, I'm surprised the mom stayed in there. I know she's not looking at the photos, but even just hearing the information, I'm really surprised she stayed in the courtroom for that one. But she handling it better than what I could handle it. I didn't know that the young lady had another child. Yeah. So just You said, yeah, so I just don't know. Yeah, Merelda. I mean, I don't know, but then the judge, yeah, right, Baca. Then the judge, like, you can't do anything. Like, it's almost like you damned if you do, damned if you don't. Only fan. Let's just hope for a smooth trial, no issues. Yeah, that I get that part too. I'm just trying to see. Oh, we do got a little TiVo time. I could take us past this break. Yeah. I'm just trying to think if I wanted to take us past this. I know that we are going through witnesses pretty efficiently. Yes, Marilda. He's okay. He may come in a little later. He said he work at night. So he just and Rachel was here earlier. She probably listening in the background, just probably not in the chat. But she chatted a little bit earlier. And yeah, Jason, he said he resting from last night. Yeah, we'll read over this stuff. The reason why they oh, no problem. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. I forgot to type it in the chat. So as far as the notice on their intent, because remember, at first this was not a DP case. They upgraded it to a DP case later. And we'll review over the documentation to show why. I also have the information in regards to when they did the search warrant for the truck. We can look at that. So we have photos of the truck. I mean, I'm assuming that they won't they'll allow us to see the photos of the truck, but mine is not color, but I do have them, and we can look at the truck and see what parts and what they submitted for that. I also have the arrest warrant, which gives all the probable calls. And I have his alibi because he's stating that he was at home, right? And I'm assuming that his wife is his alibi, but yeah, that's probably not going to work. So let me see here. So I'm going to go ahead and take us back into the courtroom. And we'll see how this goes.
All right, and you may continue with the witness.
One final question regarding this neck wound. If you were to set aside the other injuries in this case and simply look and examine the neck wound on its own, by itself, is that sufficient to cause the death of Tonia Wise? So if she did not receive immediate medical attention?
Yes.
Okay. And part and parcel to your autopsy, is there a process by which a blood standard is collected?
At the autopsy examination, we do collect a blood standard DNA sample.
Okay, and what is the purpose of that?
It could be for anything, for comparison with other DNA, for comparison with evidence, for anything that might come up in the future.
Okay, so if investigators find a blood spot and they don't know the identity, would they be able to take the blood standard and then compare it to see if there's a match?
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to show you what has been marked as states number 144. Do you recognize this? And you can open it up if you need to.
This is an envelope that contains postmortem evidence collection. Tonia Wise, her autopsy number, and the date of the autopsy examination are on the envelope, and my initials are signed on this. So this would have been collected at the time of the autopsy.
Okay, and is that the blood standard of Tonia Wise?
I can't see inside the envelope, but this would be an envelope that would be in. This is a DNA standard envelope.
Okay, is the packaging consistent with that being a blood standard of Tonia Wise?
Yes,
Okay, and are your initials actually on that?
yes.
Okay, does it appear to be in the same or substantially the same condition that it was in when it was collected on August 25th of 2018?
There are other initials and other tape on here that have been added since I did this.
Sure.
So it's been to other places, but the envelope, yes, is in the same type of condition, yes.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Your Honor, the state moves into evidence exhibit number 144.
We'll turn it to evidence without objection.
Thank you. Okay, doctor, now I want to turn your attention to the baby, Josiah Wise. And I'm going to show you what has been marked as state's exhibit number 138 for identification purposes. What are we looking at here?
During the autopsy examination, as we open body cavities, we take photographs of things that are, any findings, internal findings. This is the abdominal cavity of Tonia Wise opened, and that large object you see there is the uterus, the womb, and it is extremely enlarged because of a pregnancy.
Okay. And turn your attention now, and we'll move ahead to exhibit 139. What is that?
This is a photograph of the womb opened up. The head of inside this amniotic sac, you can see, which is still intact. There's a fetus, a near full-term fetus. The head of the fetus is toward the birth canal, the vaginal canal, so it would be in a head first type of positioning, and it's a near full-term fetus.
Okay, so it was head first into the womb. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. In exhibit number 140.
This is the baby after I've incised the amniotic sac and I'm removing the baby from the body. You can see that this is the same position it was in. Full-term child with no abnormalities noted. Full-term fetus with near full-term fetus with no abnormalities noted.
Okay. And exhibit number 141.
This is the fetus, Josiah Wise, on the examination table. You can see that anatomically is well-formed male fetus. All the weights and measurements are consistent with the estimated gestational age of 38 weeks.
Exhibit number 142.
And this is the back showing there's no abnormalities, nothing abnormal about the development of this fetus.
Okay, and finally, the last exhibit is 143.
Again, this is examination of the fetus showing that it's well-formed. All extremities are well-formed. Hands, feet, fingers, and toes are all well-formed, and the face are well-formed.
Did you weigh the baby and measure the baby?
Yes.
Okay, can you describe your results?
The weight was 5.22 pounds, and the measurement was 20 inches in length.
Okay. And I believe you said that there were no abnormalities. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Based on your autopsy as well as your review of Ms. Wise's medical records, is there any indication that this was anything other than a healthy baby boy?
No.
This was a healthy baby boy.
Yes.
Did the baby live after Ms. Wise died, or did they die at the same time? Can you provide some detail on that issue?
At this gestational age, that infant, any infant or fetus inside the womb is dependent on the mother's blood flow for nutrients and oxygen. When the mother has died, that blood flow stops. So the infant doesn't die instantaneously, but as it's depleted from oxygen and blood flow, it would die after she died in a matter of minutes.
Okay. And what was the baby's cause of death?
Well, this was an intrauterine fetal demise, and it was an intrauterine fetal demise due to the maternal death due to blunt and sharp force trauma.
Okay. And final few questions. Based on your training and experience, could the head injury to Tonia Wise have occurred before the neck injury?
It could have, yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge. Just very briefly. Ma'am, you said that you reviewed Ms. Wise's medical records.
Yes, I was given medical records to look at.
Okay, and did that include her records from her OBGYN?
There were some OBGYN records, yes.
Okay, and you are aware then at the date of her last appointment with her OBGYN on August 13th of 2018, that they estimated that the fetus was 31 weeks gestation. Is that correct?
I don't recall that from them.
Would it refresh your recollection if I showed you her OBGYN's records from that date?
Okay.
Permission to approach the witness, Judge? Thank you, Judge.
You'll see the date right there,
Yes.
and then the
August 13th.
highlighted portion right there.
Gestational age. It does say 31 weeks.
Okay, so on Ms. Wise's visit to her OBGYN who had been monitoring her pregnancy the entire time, on August 13th of 2018, her OBGYN noted that the baby's gestational age was 31 weeks. Is that correct?
According to those medical records, that's what they put in their medical records, yes.
Okay, and that was her OBGYN for the entirety of her pregnancy, correct?
I don't recall, but possibly yes.
Okay, would you like to see all of his medical records?
No, thank you.
Okay.
If that was her OBGYN, that was her OBGYN.
Okay, and also on that record that I just showed you, the estimated date of delivery for the fetus was October 15th of 2018. Is that correct?
I don't know if that's correct or not.
Would it refresh your recollection again if I showed you the OBGYN's records that you reviewed?
I don't know if I reviewed those specifically, but you can show them to me.
Sure,
yes.
permission to approach the witness. Thank you.
It's right there. It's right
Yes, it does say 10/15/2018.
EDD, estimated date of delivery, correct?
That's correct.
And ma'am, in your review of Ms. Wise's OBGYN's records, you learned that she had something called SVT.
Yes.
Okay, can you explain to the jury what SVT is?
SVT is supraventricular tachycardia, meaning that the heart can go into a rapid beat.
And it can be potentially fatal for the mother and the fetus, is that correct?
Potentially fatal, yes.
Okay, and that's why Ms. Wise's pregnancy was actually a high-risk pregnancy.
That along with, I think that she had had a previous C-section also.
And just one final question, I think that you said this when you were talking to the state, but there was no independent injury to the fetus, correct?
That's correct.
No further questions, Judge.
Any further questions from the state?
The difference in gestational age of the child, does that affect the cause of death for the child?
No,
No further questions.
And may Dr. O'Neill be released from her subpoena at this time?
Subject to recall.
You may step down subject to recall from the attorneys.